My sister that summer had stayed with my aunt just outside of East Berlin. So we all took the S-Bahn, and it was an absolute chaos. It was terrible. People crying, shouting. Some were frightened, some were angry. And I just remember I was so frightened. I thought, we never see my sister. She's lost, so to speak.
A pitiful old woman timidly walked up the 3 stairs to one of these trapos and said, when is the next train to West Berlin? Because all these people hadn't heard. The first news was at midnight over the East Berlin radio, and these people came to the station thinking they could go to West Berlin. And I'll never forget the sneering tone in which this trapo said to her, none of that anymore, Grandma, you're all sitting in a mousetrap now.
Die Menschen waren ganz anders drüben, haben zwar geschimpft auf uns.
The people were swearing at us. We felt we were simply doing our duty, but we were getting scolded from all sides. The West Berliners yelled at us, and the Eastern demonstrators yelled at us. We were standing there in the middle. There was the barbed wire, there were us guards, West Berliners, East Berliners. For a young person, it was terrible.
The anger of West Berliners boiled over. They demonstrated against the division of their city. They could not believe that the Western Allies would allow the barriers to remain. The demonstrations continued, but the West offered little protest. Mayor Willy Brandt tried to calm the crowds. He feared bloodshed if they attacked the barriers. The Allies were unsure how to react. Western rights had not been challenged.
Erstmal waren wir wütend. Dann waren wir enttäuscht.
We were outraged.
Der Bürgermeister hatte nicht mal geschafft,
and also disappointed.
Die Kommandanten dazu zu bewegen.
The mayor didn't manage to persuade the Allied commanders to make even a small protest.
Auszusprechen.
People were not clear what exactly was going on. It was almost 12 hours before it really registered that this was going to be a total sealing of the inner sector borders. Nobody was quite sure what to do about the subject, what exactly was the scope of it. The focus of all of the planners had been on the threat, the possible necessity of having to take military action to block a Soviet move on Berlin. And here suddenly everybody was relieved to find out that the Soviets had found a way to resolve their problem with the refugees in a way that did not affect Allied rights.
For the Allies, the closed border stabilized the tense Berlin situation. It was ordinary Berliners and their families who paid the price. In East Berlin, one soldier saw his last chance to escape.
Dann war die 14 Uhr, habe ich meine Gruppe eingeteilt.
At 2 o'clock, I assigned tasks to my soldiers. I was in front and I spread the others out so that it wouldn't look suspicious. Nobody noticed anything. From 2 until 4 o'clock, I was thinking about the situation and wondering what was the right decision. I would have to leave my parents and my sister. Finally, I took the decision. I jumped over the barbed wire at 4 o'clock. Then I was in the West, and they received me with a great cheer. I was the first.
3 days later, concrete blocks began to replace the barbed wire. Along the sector boundaries rose the Berlin Wall, carving the city in two. In West Berlin, morale was low. Confidence in Allied protection crumbled. Mayor Willy Brandt sent an angry letter to President Kennedy demanding action.
Die Idee war eben, nachdem auch in Washington nichts passierte, die ganze
The idea was, since there had been no reaction in Washington,
den Präsidenten darauf aufmerksam zu machen,
we had to make it
dass
clear
hier
to the president
psychologisch ein Einbruch
that there might be a
oder ein
breakdown in morale, a loss
ein
of trust,
Vertrauenseinbruch, und dass hier
something more than just a
etwas
protest had to be
notwendig ist, was
done.
man mehr als Protest machen müsste.
I think it's probably putting it mildly to say he was furious. Kennedy felt that he had shown that he was prepared to go to the brink of war, maybe even over the brink of war to defend Berlin, and here he was being criticized for doing nothing by a, as somebody put it, a mere mayor.
But Kennedy realized that a gesture was needed, a sign that America still meant to defend West Berlin. He ordered a show of force. An American troop convoy was sent to Berlin up the Autobahn across East Germany. The plan was to test East German reaction and to reaffirm Allied access rights to Berlin. The Americans were stopped and counted. They waited and were let through. The troops arrived safely. America's Vice President Lyndon Johnson flew to the city as Kennedy's personal representative. He was accompanied by General Lucius Clay, hero of the Berlin airlift. Johnson brought a message from President Kennedy.
He wants you to know that the pledge he has given to the freedom of West Berlin and to the rights of Western access to Berlin is firm.
In the east, people risked death to flee through the last chinks in the barrier.
All of a sudden, I saw my friend running, and I said to myself, "Oh my God, you're not going to make it." And I couldn't run. I turned into a pillar of salt. And an elderly woman said to me, "Go, girl, run too. You're still young. Run." So I just started running. My friend had hurt her face, but I'd only ripped my sweater. Apart from that, I wasn't hurt. We were incredibly happy. We laughed and cried. We'd just made it.
Many more made an impulsive dive for freedom.
Und eines Tages kam nicht nach Hause.
One day he didn't return home. I was waiting and waiting. He didn't come during the night or the next day, and I thought, what has happened? And then my brother-in-law came. Don't you know, he said, he's in the West. My whole world collapsed. I had to collect his things from work. It was like collecting the belongings of a dead person.
Later, Heinz Carstens helped his wife to escape. Where the border ran down the middle of the street, windows overlooked the west.